Hello everybody and welcome to day 4 of Uniko's 13th birthday February release introductions. I'm Bev, the owner and designer of all things Uniko, and today we have a lovely beautiful combination of a stamp set and layering stencils that I'm introducing. I thought, as usual, I would just go through the cards that are on the blog today and just explain them. So this first card was one that we actually made at the Uniko 13th birthday stamping retreat at the beginning of the month. Basically, we went ahead and stamped the flowers and the leaves from the stamp set, and then we used the stencils to colour. We used these little dots to create a background and added a sentiment, laid them up, added Nouveau drops and things. And if you like colouring, which I do sometimes, obviously you don't really need the stencils to colour. It isn't essential. But if you're like me, who doesn't always have the patience to sit and colour, using a stencil to apply the colour is quick, it's easy, and you get a really nice sort of blended effect without any lines and things, and yeah, you can have super fun. So this is the stamp set. It's got these two beautiful, almost cherry blossom like flowers in it, 2 leaves, and all these gorgeous sentiments. We've got just for you, best wishes, enjoy, smile and happy birthday. And as always, I like to have the little trio of dots, which is sort of the accent for the centre of the flowers. I'll go through the stencil shortly. This is a card where I have used just purely the stencils and obviously just the sentiment here from the stamp set, but obviously you could use any sentiment that you have on hand. So the whole background is created using all 4 layers of the stencil, and I will demonstrate the stencil shortly. This next one, I wanted to show how you could use the stencils and the stamps, but sort of in a simple format of just stenciling. I stenciled everything first, and then I went back in and I stamped the flowers over the top with a darker shade of ink. It was actually sort of the darker shade that I'd use for these edges of the petal, and it just gives a nice subtle effect. As I said on the blog today, I'm not 100% sure of this colour combo. I love this darker green, which is Rainforest from Concord and 9th, and I love the pinks obviously, but the orange I'm just not sure, but we'll see. And then this 4th card that I share on the blog today obviously uses a different stamp set. Now, I gave a little bit of a background of when I designed this stencil, this layering stencil, and this was the stamp set that I was originally going to use in the stencil version. But I changed my mind because I thought what I try to do is add versatility to all my products, that you can then use things that you might already have, like this stamp set already in your collection. So all I did was I inked the leaves, and then I stopped there with the stencils, and then I used my stamping platform and just stamped the flowers, added one of the sentiments. And I think this probably, along with the first card, is one of my favourites. It just shows the creativity you can have when you combine products. So we'll have a look at the stencil, and then I'll talk various things as we go along. So this stencil comes in 4 layers. I've just washed my stencils, so they are a bit sticking together. So it has 4 layers, and when you get them in the packet, they come this one on the top and work their way down. Just And I've kept them sort of like in the order as well that they, in the orientation, I should say, that they layer up. I believe I have done it correctly. So this one's sort of like the inside of the flower. We've got the petal detail, obviously the flowers. I just noticed I've bent a couple of these bits. You need to be, it's quite a delicate stencil. There's lots of sort of sticky out bits, especially on the layer here with the sort of the stamens of the flower. They are quite delicate, so just be careful when you clean. And then this one is the leaf section, and it's also got the dots. If I layer up this one, it's got, I obviously haven't got that one in the right order, so you'll be able to see when you've got it right. The dots line up inside the sort of stamens. So I definitely know that this is the one for the flower. No, again, I'm surprising myself. I thought I had it in order. But you just keep turning and then you'll find that's it, the right combination, and you'll see all the petals line up. So it is fairly easy once you keep turning and layer them up to see what order they go in. So I'll just move these aside. So you'll see here that the leaves are quite loose and delicate because the leaves are very flowing. So I have previously put some of this removable adhesive just on these tendrils of the leaves to help it stick in place and not move when you're inking through the stencil. Obviously when you clean your stencils it might come off a little bit, so you might have to replace it like I have here. But I'll show another trick as well. So I'm just going to bring up my magnetic board that I've been using this week. And I went ahead. Now I don't normally use square card. It's not my go-to, but I thought it'd be nice to see the whole design inked. So just place it in here. Just check, yep. So I'm not going to magnet this down. I've just put some temporary adhesive on, but I will use the magnets for my stencil. So I'm doing it so it's one square over the edge, each edge of my cardstock, and then I'll go ahead and put the magnets in place. So I'm covering up these little dots because I don't want to quite do them just yet. So I'm going to use a little bit of this low tack masking paper just to mask off these dots, because you'll want to go back later and add that detail if you want to. Obviously there are no rules as to say how you have to do this stencil, and you might have, if you buy it, a different way of doing things. And I was also thinking the other day, if you, for example, on this card here, obviously I've used quite a dark pink to go over purple when obviously I layered up you'll see the order I'm doing them. Now if you wanted to do this in a lighter shade, I was thinking you'd want to do this layer first with the tendrils, the sort of insides of the flower. I'm trying to see which way I had it round. I can't see, but you'd want to do this layer first, and you could do it in, like, say your yellow or whatever. And then what you'd want to do is go through with your Versamark. So once you've done your colour, emboss the detail like in a clear embossing, and then you could go over the top with your flower in a darker colour, for example, if you wanted to. So there are ways around sort of doing a lighter colour with a darker colour. So I'm just sticking, back to the stencil, I'm just sticking these tendril bits of the stencil down where I put the temporary adhesive. Now I saw a lovely colour combo yesterday online using Concord and Ninth inks, and one that I wouldn't necessarily have thought of using together. So we've got Nectar, Stardust and Rainforest. Now that's not one that I would have selected, so we'll see how it turns out. I'm going to go in first with the Rainforest green on the leaves. So what I said before is you want to go like in the direction of these tendrils. So I'm starting on this lower section here, and I'm not like going round and round like I have done in the past when I'm doing a large area. I'm sort of stroking the ink on, if you like, with my brush, and just going down in the direction of the leaves. Now if you wanted to do a light shade and then go in with a darker shade to add detail and depth, you could easily do that just by going in quite, not re-inking really, I suppose, your brush. Your brush often holds a lot of ink anyway, and then you can just go in and add, excuse me, a darker shade where you wanted to. I'm just going to move this magnet just slightly. I haven't covered up them dots because I hid them under my magnet. Just cover them up so I don't get green dots. So I want a fairly sort of flat colour, not being too precious today, because I just want to show you how these stencils work. So it is a delicate one, but I think the results are beautiful. So I've called it Organic Blooms. If you know the Uniko product range, you'll have seen Originally Organic and Originally Organic Editions, and there is also Organic Wishes, but there are also other stamps that are drawn in similar style. It's my drawing style, I suppose you would call it, one that I just sort of developed myself. So here I'm just going upwards, so you want to go down and you want to go up a bit on this one. So yeah, it's my sort of like design style, I suppose, one that if you saw it somewhere you'd recognise it was mine. So I believe it was November-ish, or was it December? I can't remember. I'm trying to think now when it came out. I did a Paper Craft Society box for Craft Stash, and I designed a stamp set similar to originally organic, in the same style. I can't remember what I called it now, you know, my brain has gone blank. Anyway, I designed this set and it was more sort of like a posy. I'll get it out at the end because I know where it is and show you. Anyway, so I did this in a similar style, and my idea was, because the Papercraft Society box was only available through Craft Stash, I would design it in a similar style that if you bought it and you'd already got some originally organic stamps, you could mix and match and vice versa. So the flowers are quite small compared to the ones that I've done in the stamp set that coordinate with this. So the flowers came from that set. So I'm just gently peeling this off, and there is the leaves. Obviously there's a little bit of temporary adhesive that is just stuck to the card. Just make sure you haven't got inky fingers like I get sometimes before you get them off. Because before now I've done lovely stenciling, and then when I come to get these little bits of temporary adhesive off, I smudge and then I get ink where I don't want it. So you could let it dry a little bit more than I have. I mean, these inks tend to dry quite quick anyway, but sometimes there is the risk of sort of smudging them, especially if you've gone quite solid with your inks. I should have a brush somewhere to brush it off. So there is the beautiful leaves, and then you could go in, if you wanted to, you could go in with the flower stamps. These fit quite nicely inside the flowers. I've got some pre-stenciled cut out flowers as well. So you see how these are the pre ones, so you could pre-ink and then cut out and layer up. Obviously I did do yellow on there. On top of pink, and you can just sort of play about a little bit more, but the stamps do fit inside and you can play about. Obviously on this one I decided to go ahead and add a completely different stamp set with it, but we'll go ahead and we will use the stencils. So I was a square outside lining up, and you see if I just put these in the corners, you can see how the flowers all fit in the spaces. And we'll go through and ink them. I'm trying to think where it was. This top one is a large flower, and on this card this is where I made a little tiny error which frustrated me a little bit. That should have been coloured pink, but never mind. I thought no one will notice unless I say, and you might have noticed, you might not have. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to use Nectar for the larger flowers. So I've got a little-ish brush here. Now there is enough gap just between most of them to be able to ink through and not get transference of the ink onto the flower next to it. But again, if it's close, I'm like this one here, I might actually add a little bit of masking tape paper just so I don't cross over. Obviously you can do all your flowers all the same colour. There's no rules to say that you have to do 2 colours like I am here, but I think it just creates a bit of interest really to the pattern. And then I'm going to just cut a little bit. I've got a little bit left off over here, so I'm just going to mask that off. But I think it's a fun stencil where there's lots of different options and combinations that you can do with the stencils alone. But if you add in the stamps along with it, I just think it has even more potential. There's just so many options. As I say, with most of these, I'm only scratching the surface when it comes to showing the creative potential of all these products when I'm introducing them. Sometimes I get a little bit sort of, I must get like stage fright almost. My brain just like freezes as to, oh my goodness, what was I going to actually do with these products when I design them? But then I sit down, I start playing, I start inking, and it all comes flooding black. So sometimes you just have to go with the flow. If you see here, this stencil, when I've cleaned it, I've poked it up slightly. So I'm just trying when I ink to go downwards so the ink doesn't seep underneath. I clearly wasn't as careful as I normally am when I was cleaning the stencil. I just grabbed my larger Nectar pad. I think the little one needs re-inking. I just felt like I was inking forever on that one. So I'm just covering up this. The Stardust is quite a darker colour, so I'm not too worried if the Nectar popped over onto where I didn't quite want it. I'm not really adding any particular shading or anything to the flowers. You know, I'm not going darker in places or lighter in places. I'm just applying the colour because I just want you to see sort of this pattern come to life. And I think there's one more just up here. Just move that magnet. And I'll just do this partial top flower here with Nectar, and then I'll go in. I've probably done some, but we'll see. As I say, there are no rules, and maybe sometimes I overcomplicate things more than they need to be. So yeah, this coordinates with the originally organic sort of series. It sort of goes in there with, I guess it does have a bit of a Scandinavian feel to it as well. I am heavily influenced by Scandinavian design when I design my products. This doesn't want to stay in place. Sometimes it's lovely low tack tape, but if you've used it once, sometimes it loses its tackiness. I'm just hiding the ones that I've already inked That one must have had a little bit more orange on my brush, as it's come out a slightly different colour. Another sign that I need to give my brushes a good wash. But hey ho, you get the idea. So Stardust is quite a rich yellow, and I'd say it's got a bit of a sort of an olive tinge to it. It's that sort of crossover going into the greens. So I wasn't sure how this would turn out being paired with the nectar, but we'll see. It looked pretty on the sample that I'd seen. Someone else had done, obviously used a different product. It was a stamp and die set they'd used, and they'd used this colour combination. And it looked really pretty. So I thought, oh, well, I'll give it a go. I like to try different colour combinations. If you don't try them, then you don't know, do you? I do get stuck in my ways, and I stick to the same sort of colours that I always do. So sometimes it is nice just to get out of your comfort zone and try something. If it doesn't work, I won't use it again for this particular product. But I say, we have to give it a go, don't we? So doing all these two sizes, different colours, it is a little bit more sort of time consuming than if you just did one colour all the way over. But as I say, can't make my videos too easy on me, on myself. So these are really good actually. I'm not getting through my Scotch tape as quick as I was. Now I'm using this magnetic board to hold my stencils in place. Obviously, as you can see, I'm moving my magnets around a bit depending on where I'm inking. That just helps me hold the stencil down in different places, and so the ink doesn't seep underneath. So we'll reveal the flowers. Now maybe if I was going to go back and do this again, instead of nectar, I'd probably use grapefruit, which is a little sort of darker shade, which I'm actually going to go in and add the detail with. But yeah, I'd probably go in with grapefruit with the Stardust. I think the nectar it's lovely, but it's a lot paler. And with the rich rainforest and the rich Stardust, I think grapefruit would look a little bit nicer. Depends, I suppose, what sort of contrast you're going for. And the balance, there was a while ago, a lot of people, it was very on topic of your balance of colours. So one colour is really strong and you have a lot of it on your card. The next colour you have a little bit less, and then you just go down in sort of like in a trio of colours. But obviously sometimes we use more colours than just 3. But yeah, there was this sort of like formula of how much of one colour to use before you sort of like added the next colour, and you'd reduce it slightly. So I'm just lining up the petal detail on this on the inked petals. Oh, I moved it slightly then. That is the only other thing. Being on metal, it does slip a little now and then. But hey ho. So I'm now, my brain is now thinking, well, what colour should I go in with for the Stardust? So I'm going in with Grapefruit on the nectar flowers to add this darker shade on the edges of these petals. So now I'm thinking, well, what colour should I do for Stardust? Possibly lemongrass. And to test it, what I'll do, where I did the Stardust on my piece of grid paper, I'll test the lemongrass next to it and decide if that is the colour. See, another thing, I thought I was being super organised, having sort of a colour combination to use with you, and I thought I had myself all planned, but there's always something my brain misses. But this is me, how I create. I don't always plan everything in advance. I just jump in and start inking up and playing. I think sometimes that's... So this is lemongrass and that's Stardust. We'll see how... It's kind of brighter. We'll give it a whirl and see. So it doesn't have to be much of a difference because it's just sort of like on the edges of the petals. And I'm using quite large brushes here. You might want to use more of a sort of detail brush, especially if you don't want to do masking in between. I noticed there that I had gone over slightly onto the yellow with the peach. So this one doesn't have any detail because it's the way that I've sort of twisted. It's this petal here on this orange one is this petal on the yellow one. It's how it's sort of, I've rotated the flowers and that reveals. So the lemongrass worked quite nicely. I misaligned a little bit. Usually I'm about 10 centimeters or so up from the edge of my desk. Normally I have my, so you can see everything in the camera. So my eye isn't right over unless I put my big head in view. So I do apologise for my misalignment, but hopefully you get the idea and the look. And then this is the final layer, apart from going back and adding the detail dots. So with this, with the peachy colour, I know what colour I will use, and I will use Sorbet, which is sort of like the next colour up from if I was doing a layering stencil where each colour layers on top. This is the combination. I'd start with nectar, do grapefruit, and then use Sorbet. So I've got that sorted. For the other flower, I think I might do a wheat, so like a brownie colour, which is unusual for me. Not a colour I tend to reach for. So these are quite delicate, and you want to be careful when you're inking that you don't pull up any of the delicate pieces. So I'm just being quite careful as I'm inking these. You might want to use more of a dabbing motion as such, I suppose. But then the only thing, when I've used daubers before, because they're foam, they do catch a little on the sort of like the delicate areas. So you can see here that I wasn't super careful, and I realised, but I can bend it back into place. And sometimes what I do is I put stuff under a really, really heavy book for a while, if I'm not using it for a while, to flatten it back in place. So yeah, just one thing to be mindful of if you get this stencil is just to be careful on this layer. I mean, I just love the detail it gives to the flowers. Cat hair there. Nothing unusual in this house, cat hair everywhere. So yeah, I'm thinking, because we've gone sort of, I was thinking maybe wheat. So we've done stardust, lemongrass, and I might do wheat, just to give a little bit of sort of contrast. We'll see. We'll see how it turns out. I might be making a big mistake, or it might look really nice. We'll see. So this one you don't really need to mask off. There is a big enough gap in between each of them to add individual colours. It might turn out that this isn't dark enough, but we'll see. So I'm looking forward to revisiting this stencil over the coming weeks and playing about with combinations of different stamps and things from previously released Uniko stamps, and seeing what will work with it. Looking at techniques as well that you can use through it. The team have been amazing this week. Their samples have just blown my mind. Julie has used this stencil today, and might have been the stamp she used or the stencils. I haven't read in depth. I just saw a sample and it just blew my mind because her watercolouring skills are just superb. And beautiful cherry blossoms. I'm looking forward to seeing the cherry blossoms in spring. So it's worked quite well actually, the wheat colour. So as you can see, if I bring in this card here, you'll see that the little dots that I've added inside it just finishes the flower off, in my opinion. So I'm going to go back in, and they are on the leaf stencil. So I'm going to remove these. I'm just removing all these little bits of masking paper that were on the stencil, and then I'm going to give my stencil a little quick wipe over with a microfiber cloth, just so I don't transfer any of the green anywhere I don't want it to be. Now again, normally I'd run the stencil under the tap, because I've only used ink through it. It just running it under the tap means that I don't catch. You can hear me catching a few of the tendrils as I clean this stencil. Just make sure it's dry. I mean, it's not, I could have left the green ink on because I'm not going to use a big brush. And then what you want to do is just replace the stencil over the top. Now, yes, I've made it a little bit awkward that you have to go back to this layer. It wasn't until after I'd done a fairly big batch of the stencils that I realised that I'd made it a little bit awkward, and I could have actually put the dots on the petal detail layer. But as I'm not a pro, I wouldn't call myself a pro when it comes to designing layering stencils. I've just started out in the biz of layering stencils. I've learned from my slight error, but it's not too bad. Just to reapply this layer and go over to add the dot detail. If you buy the stamps and the stencils together, obviously you've got the little dots in the stamp set that you could easily just go in and stamp them. But obviously if you don't get both together and you just have the stencils, you'll want to go back and add the detail. You could go in and add them with a fine liner. There's various options, isn't there, at the end of the day, but maximize your stencil. So I've gone in with nutmeg there, which is the darkest sort of brown, and that is the finished. I missed one. How did I miss that one? Now is the finished. Now is the finished panel. Now, I don't know about the colours. I'm not 100% sold on this colour combination for this particular design. You could try, sorry, knocking the camera there. It's something I might try for something else that hasn't got the layers as such, because I've added in different colours, haven't I, on top. But that is the completed stenciled panel, and I think you can have so much fun. It has a very nice Scandinavian feel to it. So one more thing I thought I'd show you before I call this video a day is I went ahead and stamped the main 4 images, so the 2 flower sizes and the 2 leaves from the stamp set. And I thought I'd quickly show you how you can use the stencils to colour them. Now I'm not using, am I going to use my board? I will use my board. I'll give it a quick wipe over though, because I don't want the colour going on that. Give my board a quick wipe over, a quick dry, and then we'll pop this down here. And then it's quite easy to see on the matching up to see which is which. So this little leaf and stem here is in this corner, so I'm just sort of layering it up. I'm gonna hide that there. So this does take a little bit of masking, because this one is quite close together to another one, but it's just a way of combining using the stencil to colour your stamped image, and I didn't want to make the stamp set massive, like the largest size, which is the £16 stamp set. I didn't want to go, I wanted to keep it the £11.50 price point, but I didn't want to compromise. I couldn't compromise on the sentiments, so I had to compromise a little bit on which stems and leaves I chose to do as the stamp version. So I chose this little one, which the little one is the one I used for leaves on this card, and I just trimmed off the stem and I poked the leaves in to fit inside. So I have a little detail brush, because this is quite small. I'm just making sure that that is in place, and I just went ahead and did the colour. So I believe I used evergreen ink on this before, so I'm just using what's left to do a light shade over the top, all over, and then get the ink pad, and I went in a little bit heavy there, and I've gone over the edge. So you just want to be a little bit more careful than I am being. And maybe I've been a little bit wonky on placing my stencil as well, but hey ho, the joys of videos and not editing them. So I've inked up there. Obviously they're quite little stamped images anyway, that they wouldn't take a lot to colour, but honestly sometimes I just don't have the patience to sit and colour. And as I've said at the beginning, I love the sort of the seamless look to ink blending, coloured, you know, that sort of, they just have a really nice smooth colour to them when you've ink blended through a stencil, especially with brushes. I think there's just a look about it, you can tell. Maybe it's me, you can tell with my colouring, because I'm just, yeah, I don't always have the patience. See, that's what I should have done before, is start off my stencil and bring the colour in, but I was just going for it. But I'd cut these, I'm going to cut these out and probably use them on a card that I will share with you on release day. So that is using the leaves for colouring the leaves, and then we have the flowers. So I'm just gonna clean this stencil a little bit because I don't want to use the same colours. Can you tell I'm a little bit disappointed in how that colour combination came out, but never mind. We've got to try them, haven't we? Can't always use my favourite colours. So you've got a couple of choices, you'll see. So that's the large flower, and it fits just like so, just placing it over the top. So I'm gonna just secure that there and down here, and then just mask this top one off. So colour choice. Let's just use my usual pinks. So I'm loving watermelon at the minute. I actually used watermelon on this large flower here with honeysuckle, which is my other favourite pink. So what I did before, I went in quite dark on the outsides of the petals, and then went, or did I do the reverse? No, I did it this way. But you could do darker inside and then go lighter on the outside. Like so. And then you're going to move. So there's a little bit of moving about to use the stencils for colouring. But just look at that. I just think there is like a seamless look to it. And then you've got the smaller flower here. So you can't really do more than one at a time when it comes to colouring the stamped images. There's two large flowers that are solid on the stencil, and then there's only one small one that is a full flower. So you do need to just do them individually. But before, when I made this card here, I had all my flowers stamped out in a row, and I just went down them. So I did all the big ones first and then did all the small ones next. So that would be a way around it. So with this one, I'm going to do my dark colour in the middle and do the light sort of shade around the edges, because then you can go in and add your darker colour with the petal detail. Now this, if you move your stencil around a bit, but another sort of tip that I gave a lady at a show with the Pick Posies was, so the reason I don't have registration marks or numbers or anything, the more detail I add to a stencil, the more expensive it, the longer it takes to cut and the more expensive it comes. So when you get your stencils and they're all in the order, you could just use a little Sharpie to mark which is the top, which is the bottom, as such. So I've gone to this straight away. I just saw it and knew that this was for the larger flower here. And I'm just placing my magnets over the places where I don't want ink to be, and then I'm going to go in with my slightly darker shade of honeysuckle and just go in quite heavy on the edges of these little petal edges, like that. And then for the ocean side, which I used for, which was on my brush, I should say, that's a big one. So these are the little ones down here. Just getting to know your stencils as well, I suppose. The more you play with it, the easier it will become, and it'll come second nature. So yeah, I had Oceanside on that one, and then this one has peacock on it, and I'm just using the ink that is left over to add the detail, like so. And then what I'd probably do is, like I did before, is either add an enamel dot or add some Nouveau drops, which I did on this card. I used the yellow, I can't remember what name it is on the yellow, Buttermilk, and it's a gloss. And it actually, sometimes with Nouveau drops, they can change their colour slightly if you do them over a colour. But I like this, it actually kept its yellow colour quite nicely. I'll probably go in and use this, because I've done brighter colours on this. I'll probably use this yellow, which is dandelion yellow. So I'll go in and add that shortly. And that is Organic Blooms clear stamps and Organic Blooms layering stencil. So I'll just bring these back in. So they're the ones that I did today, and these are my other ones that are on the blog today. So I was going to quickly show you, wasn't I, the Paper Craft Society box. It'd be nice for you to actually see the size difference of the stamps. So in the Paper Craft Society, obviously we had this one, which the stamp is featured in as well. But you have the flower. So the flower here, it's, let me just get a white piece. So it's featured here in the butterfly, which is quite large, and then it's featured here on this sort of butterfly trail. But this was the other set that's sort of very originally organic, and these are the two flowers in that set, and you can see the size difference. There is a really sort of dramatic size difference. So if you do have the Paper Craft Society box, you can mix and match these flowers. But I'd sized the ones in this to go with Originally Organic, which is this set.
Motion detected at the front door.
Originally Organic editions. Hard to see, but this is like a heart shape. Again, I've used, it was the Catherine Pooler Midnight Black ink, which stains your stamps, unfortunately. But there's little gaps inside that you can fill in. So the reason why the flowers were so tiny in here was so you can mix and match. But yes, so if you do have the Paper Craft Society box, it does coordinate with the flowers in that as well. So when I was thinking, oh, I'll explain that to you and show you that, I was also thinking of other stamp sets that you could use with the leaves. So obviously here I've used the Uniko style, and I'm not sure where I've placed that, but I have linked it in the blog post today. But I was thinking, well, Beautiful would work nicely, especially in the sort of smaller gaps. They might look a little bit lost in this larger space, but you could layer up the blooms as such if you wanted to use that one. Again, this single flower from Pure Florals Cosmos would work, obviously in the smaller. You could use, without using the stems, for example, you could stamp the larger Cosmos probably easier to see here. You could stamp it and then trim off the stems and layer it in. That one would sort of work. I think Beautiful Blooms would work well on this with this stencil. That would fit in the bigger gap. It'd be a little bit big for this one, but again, you could do it so you add it as dimension, stamp, fussy cut, and then add them in. So that would work. But then you have this sort of detail flower. The detail part of the flower, you could do something a little bit more creative or different. But then you could also use this Beautiful Blooms too, and you could pair it with Beautiful Blooms 3, for example. This is a layering flower, so you could mix up the two flowers, but this flower would work beautifully in both as well. You've got, see, a lot of my stamps, you can hardly see them because I've used the darker shade. You could use Kindness Blooms, would fit nicely, the loopy flower, and you've got two sizes there, so that would work nicely. But I'm going to test some of these and show you. You never know, I might get them done for release day, we will see. But then you've got Beautiful Blooms 1 as well. That one would work, the smaller flower, but again, I think you'd have to stamp and die cut. This one actually has matching dies that I've got in stock, so you could easily stamp, die cut, and then adhere them sort of raised off the card with the leaves. So it's got dies. And the other one, which is Wonderful Day, which I thought of as well. This one is on sale. There's a few left. It's one that I'm gonna sort of shelve for a little while, but I think this one would look lovely as well with the stencil. So there's just a few there that I thought that came to mind that you could play with the leaves from this stencil. So I think that was everything that I wanted to tell you today when it comes to these stamps and layering stencils. And yeah, be sure to check out the brand ambassador blog hop today. There's so much more inspiration from the team. Thank you for joining with me and bearing with me for this longer video. I will be back tomorrow with the last product introduction. I hope you'll join me, which means release day is only 2 days away. Well, the rest of today and tomorrow, and then Friday all the newness will be available on the website. So bye for now.